Welcome back, everyone, to another week of We'd Been There. We want to give a special shout out to our subscribers, who this show is going to be primarily live for. I'm going to I think I can tag everyone. I can't tag everybody. That's really stupid, because this is a group, right? So now I can't tag people in the group.
I don't know what it is. Not entirely sure what's going on.
I'm just gonna tag everybody that I can. That's in this.
I know there's a prop plane flying by over my head every so often.
I think I can just tag subscribers.
Well, Eric, let's do that. Welcome to this week's episode. We're going to be covering harvesting, drying, and curing.
My bad. I totally forgot to actually do the full intro. I'm Rick from Uncle Rick's Genetics. This is Matt from Parts Unknown.
My name's Matt from an undisclosed location.
From an undisclosed location. That's worse. That's worse than Parts Unknown. People might just not know where you're from versus you're not disclosing. Max Bland, good morning. Good evening. Welcome to the podcast. How are you, buddy?
Nice.
We're going to start this out. Matt, you got your dabs?
Yeah, I'm kind of scared right now, to be honest with you. For those of you that don't know, I am suffering terribly. I had the summer flu, and now I have, a summer sinus infection. SSI disability, summer sinus infection, and it's disabling.
Stupid, bro.
But I guess we're going to fucking do a dab and see how it turns out.
I actually have to grab some weed again.
If I die, just know I died doing a dab. Death by dabs. Oh yeah, a little backfire action. You see that, folks? A little poof poof. You know, like those Honda Accords. Oh shit. Oh shit.
Oh, sorry about that, everyone. I needed to grab some bud for myself. Well, there you go, man. Fucking, it's all progress. Max Blend. Put it in the ground. If you guys are, if anybody watching or anybody listening is part of our Wake and Bake live that we do every Saturday morning, this morning was a really, really funny live, and it was just a lot of fun. I was literally almost crying this morning. It was hilarious. And one of the things that came from this morning was someone asking if they should put a plant in the ground, and it kind of elevated from that question to now we have an entire mantra of hashtag put it in the ground. So I'm glad that bled into the podcast, because if you're in doubt, put it in the ground.
We should get some merch that says that. Put it in the ground.
Yeah, we actually have Basement Boy working on it right now. So if anybody's close to the group and knows who we're talking about, Basement Boy is actually taking care of getting hashtag put it in the ground shirts taken care of, designed and made, and we're going to be doing a small little subscriber thank you giveaway for just for the fun. Just for a little bit of an update, of real-time update. Max, glad to actually be stoned for the podcast. Yeah, man, that sucks you were at work this morning.
Who doesn't like putting it in the ground? My ears are blocked too, so I can't hear shit.
I think people are afraid to put it in the ground because it's immobile after that. you know.
I got 2 kids. I'm not afraid to put it anywhere.
I don't think it's the same it that's being put in the ground, buddy.
Talked about 2 different crowds.
But yeah, dude, fucking, you know, it's definitely definitely a hilarious live video. If you go back and watch it, it's really funny. We're probably gonna have those shirts. Dead ass. Cool. Someone with a more epic beard than you, Rick. Yes, sir. Matt has his beard's actually paying him rent currently. It's not. I don't even know if that's Matt's. It might just be, you know, he might have just has a symbiotic relationship, like, you know, the krill that lives on the back of the tiger shark.
I got this from Party City. Like 3 years ago. Never took it off.
The glue was too strong. That's funny, dude. I got this from Party City. Forever I got it from Party City. That's good. That's good, dude. That should be a shirt that just says, "I got this beard from Party City." That would be a fucking hilarious shirt, man.
It is a party.
Secondarily, we were talking about it, Matt. So this might be something that you want to get into as well. But we were gonna make a hat and see if we can get a beard attached to it with an elastic on the chin, so that people could wear like an Uncle Rick's Genetics hat and have this, you know, an elastic beard to go on with the hat. And then you could do the same thing. You could have like a frontward facing hat with, like, you know, the beard connected to it, and people could just plop it on. Yeah, man. Watch the podcast and their Matt and Eric beard attire. You know, attach it to a merch hat that you were talking about. Peter Klinger, put it in the ground.
Beards with hats and hats with beards, but what? Hey, yeah.
There isn't a market. It's just stupidity. I
will take it under consideration.
I think it would be hilarious if we had beard hats. I think that would be fucking hilarious, dude. Really funny. So, without further ado, we could actually get into the podcast. For your audio, for the audio listeners, I do apologize for the massive 10-minute intro here.
I think it's more so 12-minute ado that we just had. 12-minute ado.
Well,
so moving on from the ado
and
right into the clip, snip, chopping that big, bad, beautiful babe down.
Right. So to connect from last week.
Actually, before Eric, before we even get into that, I think we should briefly cover how do we know she's ready.
Well, I mean, how
do we know you're ready to harvest?
Well, there's a couple telltales, like, you know, you have an 8-week plant. When you get to 8 weeks, it's usually pretty close to finish. That's when, you know, you should start checking trichomes. You know, and that's essentially, if you have no idea, which is why we're doing the podcast in the first place, you know, you're really selecting your harvest time based on things that are microscopic. So, you know, you're looking at stuff that is needing a 100 to 500x microscope to see, you know, and they're called trichomes. So your trichome has, you know, 3 different stages of being, you know, ripe, and one of them is clear. Clear is where the trichome has just been formed. It's almost like a balloon, right? The balloon is there, but it's empty, and then throughout flower, as it gets through flower, THC fills up this trichome head, and it becomes from clear to kind of milky to solid white. And then if you were to let these trichomes further be matured, what would happen is they would start the process of degradation, and they would degrade and turn into an amber trichome, which is not THC anymore or CBD, but it would be converting itself to CBN. CBN is where you get all the couch lock from. CBN is like straight NyQuil. That stuff is nighty night. So if you let a plant go a long time and you have 20 to 50% amber trichomes, you start getting a lot of couch lock. If you go over 50% trichomes that are amber, you're getting into nighty night land where you smoke that and find a couch, because you're going down after that. But
couch will probably find you, to be honest with you.
It might seek you out and be like, I heard you needed to lay down.
Might be home alone and you might just hear over here.
Look, I'm here. Right. But yeah, so when to connect from the last podcast, you're running your plant from, through flower. You got everything taken care of. You've trimmed it, you've trained it, it's fattened up. You gave it all its, flower power stuff, and the thing is really, it's ready to be chopped, right? So you check your trikes, and usually they're not ready. I'm gonna be honest with you. Almost nobody's like, yeah, I checked it and it's ready to go. First check, unless you've run a plant and its parameters, it's not usually something you get right the first time. And it's not even like a competition like that. You just check it. If it's not ready, it's not ready. You let it wait, let it sit, you let it keep going through flower, and eventually it will be ready. Patience is the biggest thing to highlight at this point. Nothing will help you more than having patience. You literally need to be able to walk away and not think about smoking your butts. And another thing that people like to do that directly correlates to what you shouldn't be doing, as I just said, is people will like to take a tester nug. So you're going to be ready to chop your plant, let's say, and you want to see how it is. So you saw the trikes, but you want to try it out. And there's nothing wrong with that, but what you should do is you should take a bottom nug. And the bottom nug is what you should be checking with checking with your microscope, because the top's going to finish first. It's in the light. So remember, THC gets degraded by light, so it degrades while it's in light. What's up, Swen? How you doing? Peter, visual signs of browning tips of sugar leaves. That's a sign of burn. Browning on the pistil hair is a sign that the pistil hair is mature. Or maturing, and that is a good sign to start checking trikes. But usually going by the pistil hair maturity isn't accurate, because once it's ready to go, it could start growing white pistils again. And then if you cut it down with white pistils, those white pistils will still turn orange. So when you're checking, you want to check a bottom nug. Bottom nugs take longer to finish, and when the bottom's done, the rest is definitely done. And I've seen people that have bad penetration where they have a lot of light at the top of the canopy, no light at the bottom, and they have to actually take away the top buds and leave the bottoms on the plant and let it finish. I've seen that more times than I can count. And, it's not really like there's anything wrong with that either. It's just you're being more adamant about not cutting down unfinished buds. A lot of people cut down unfinished buds. And a big telltale sign of that is you'll smoke like a top nug and it'll get you really high, and then the rest of it is kind of like larvae and not very strong, and you got to keep smoking and smoking and smoking. But then you pack a ball of your top cola and you hit one hit, and the thing's like, bam, smacks you in the face. That's a really good telltale sign that you should have harvested, or better training or trimming or pruning throughout, or maybe just waiting. Patience is tough, especially if you're in a sativa. If you're in a sativa, you're looking at 11 weeks, 10, 11, 12 weeks.
Forever.
Right. And then let's just highlight the obvious. If you fucked up at all and you start stunting that plant in any way, just start adding the weeks right on the end. You got a 10 week plant, you screw it up and just slow it down 2 weeks, you 12 weeks. And you're already into it for veg for what, 60 days minimum. So it gets tough 5 months in to not cut that thing down and try to jam it in a bowl, but have some patience. Take a bottom nug, wet trim it, let it sit in the open air on like a paper towel. You're not going for taste. You're not going to get a good taste out of it. You could get a good taste, but you're not going to get away from the plant material being there, it not being cured, it not being totally dry. You're not going to get away from those things. So, really, you're just trying to understand the feeling that you get, the euphoria that's from it, because curing doesn't make it stronger; it just makes it taste better by removal of the organic plant material through anaerobic bacteria. So you're looking at this in a way that is like, hey, I'm just going to try this little nuggie, see how it gets me. And if you're super, super, super happy with that, and they're all kind of even with their trichomes and you're ready to chop, then you're good to go. Some people will chop that little bottom nuggie off and then be like, yeah, dude, it was like a 5-minute head high. The trikes weren't really super white. I did have like 20% clear. So then they'll let it sit for another week. And you check it every other day. And you really want to just be on top of that with a microscope. But having the microscope, not a jeweler's loupe. Everybody tells me they got a damn jeweler's loupe. I don't care about a jeweler's loupe. Don't tell me you got a jeweler's loupe. If you have that super magnification jeweler's loupe that goes onto your cell phone, those are the like bare frickin' minimum for checking trichomes, and it's still not close enough. So definitely make sure you have a good microscope. Make sure that something is digital. You can take pictures of it, so you can have your own record and know when you chop the thing.
I have a jeweler's loupe.
You have a jeweler's loupe?
Yeah. That's what no,
shame is shame.
No,
shame.
No.
Shame.
No. Actually, I can actually see very well. So I have a 30x, a 60x, and a 90x on my jeweler's loupe. Has an LED light on it. It's a different kind of jeweler's loupe, I guess. But that's what I use in the very beginning. Like when I feel like my plant's about finished, that's what I use to check initially, because just by the tones of the trichomes, and then if it looks ready, then I'll whip out the microscope, then I'll get down deep in there and see what it's really hitting for. But my microscope, gotta hook it up to the computer. It's a pain in the neck sometimes, so I check it with the jeweler's loupe.
My microscope goes right to the phone, right here, buddy. Wireless.
Yeah.
Upgrade a little bit, and you don't have to do all that computer stuff.
Well, Eric's got all the fancy technology. I'm more of a man's man. I'm a little more primitive. If I can get like 4 shards of glass and like stack them on top of each other and get some kind of good magnification out of that, that's probably what I'd be using.
Most jeweler's loupes are like 30. You know what I mean? And they're just one size, or they're 60. So having a 90X, and Swen says he has it too. He has a 90X grower's loupe. So a 90X, I would say, like it is 100 times is where you're starting to get the visual on a trichome. And that's, like I said, that's something you have to do. Like you have to be able to see a trike on that level, and it's not even like just being able to see the first wave of these trichomes. You want to take a bud, and not break it, but it's going to be wet, so it's totally different. You want to like spread this thing out and open up these leaflets, and then take the microscope and look in between those things. And that's where in between all this, it's going to look like wreckage, like someone knocked a building down, right? And you're looking just through rafters and all the supports and all this, and you could be able to see back into these little caverns all the way in there. That's what you're looking at. You're not looking at the outsides. You're looking at the inside of these buds, as far as you can go. Still hard to see it. Right. I get it, Swen, but that's what I'm saying. Having something that's over 100, even 200 magnification is only going to help you. What's that? Is that it?
This is what I used to initially check it. It's got bright LEDs, it's got UV. Probably can't see that one, but
No. And you're all grainy. You're all
And
grainy
then,
today.
and then I got this bad boy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
You know,
exactly
that's
what you
your
need. Just they made them a little bit.
1000X.
They made them a little bit.
Mine's a little older. It's a little more primitive.
Right.
You
They
know,
make those go to a phone with a wire, and then now they're wireless. You know, if anybody needs one, just hit me up.
I can take it off the stand. Manipulate it with my hand.
Well, that's why. Right there. That's why I don't like the wired one. You know, you're going along, and you're scoping in here, and you got your wire the whole time just dragging along, buds pulling, doing all this crap. Where if you have the wireless one, it's just in your hand. You go here, go there, you go here, you go here, here. You know, you're good to go. I mean, ease of access, functionality. You know, that's really what you're after here, and that's what we try to preach. Is making life easy for you. If you're like, yeah, I could almost see it, that's not going to make life easy for you.
And also, like,
bound to
when
make
you
mistakes.
guys are harvesting your plants, I also encourage you to, you know, try different stages of your trichome. You know, because everybody is different and everybody has different preferences of what they want to get from their, you know, with their cannabis that they're smoking. Some people like a really, you know, energetic high for certain things. Some people like the hybrid high, and some people like, you know, the full indica high. So, no, because I said so. Leon, I'm doing something right now. No. Fucking shit. You know, life is life, guys.
Real people, real situations.
Real people doing real things. You know, we've been there, right?
The real edition.
Yeah. So,
Ian McLean. Hashtag put it in the ground.
Definitely. You know, check different stages of your trichome development because, you know, some people might not prefer the couch lock. So find that happy medium, and then you know what to look for. You know, as you're progressing, you're like, hey, this is where I want it. You know, I like a 80-20, you know, cloudy to amber. I like a 30-70, you know, and you can kind of gauge it, you know, by that. So it's also good because you don't want to just be this way every time and, you know, you're not benefiting from it fully. You know, also, the longer you let a plant go into that development, not only are you losing THC, which always isn't because
you're cutting in and out, bro.
Terpenes. I'm cutting what?
Now you're cutting in and out. It might be the airplane flying, but every time it flies by, you start cutting in and out.
Really, that's weird.
You're good now. Now you're not even glitchy.
Maybe it's a Russian plane. Who knows?
You're good now, dude. So I don't know. That was really weird.
What was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about the percentages of trichomes, you know, and what your preference is. And I totally agree with you because I have chopped plants that were the same and one was more mature than the other, and it's like, damn, should have just let this one go another week than this one because it, you know, don't really like the way that just milky trichomes is. It's so much better having a little bit of CBN in there, get a little bit of that sedation in versus just like you were saying, the head high.
And what else I was talking about too is like how Eric touched on, like the longer, you know, the more amber you get your trichomes, you know, you start to lose THC percentages, which always necessarily isn't a bad thing, because most likely you're gaining terpenes, or the terpenes that you have are, you know, getting a little bit more developed and raising their levels as well.
Well, it just becomes more fuller spectrum.
Well, yeah, I don't know if anyone else has experienced. I mostly get this from like blueberry strains. Most of the blueberry strains I get are like low, relatively low in THC, 16, 17%. Some are 18,
Right.
but they rock me every time, And then like I can sit there and smoke like a jet fuel strain and it have like 31%. And I get super stoned. Don't get me wrong, but I'm
It's
like
not the
I was
same.
thinking like that's double the amount, and like the blueberry still does the job.
Right. And this is what we talked about, for a few weeks now on Terpene Tuesday. And in the blueberry strain too, you see more people having like a 3% um, terpene profile on these things. But like, when you get into degradation, right? So like clear trichomes is going to be um, not really like a euphoric thing, but you're still going to get effects from smoking cannabis that has terpenes and cannabinoids and stuff like that. But when you're just like, let's say you grew something that just has THCA, no CBD, and it has a lot of terpenes in it, you're going to get one effect, right? Right, Ian, the entourage effect. And when you add in now letting them degrade, and now you have CBN, or maybe you have CBG, CBN, THCA, CBD, and your terpene profile. So now you're getting more of a fuller spectrum, and people that are more the patients, like people that are cancer patients, stuff like that, they use like 60 to 70% amber trichome cannabis. It is like you wouldn't even want to smoke that. You know what I'm just saying? Like that shit is so strong in CBN, and the cannabinoids are not alone. The THCA is not alone. Essentially, it's got a bunch of other stuff going on in there, and that's because of the CBD strain, or like Matt's saying, it can also have attribute into how long you let the plant flower for. So, if you do like the couch lock, and you do like the sedation, let it go longer to have a higher amber count. And if you more or less like the speedy little head high, and you don't really want it to be super like sedative, you could chop it when you're at like 20% or 10% clear left, no amber. And a lot of the times the clears don't go away until amber starts showing up. So if you're going for zero clears, you can't get all white milk. Trichome. Sometimes you have to have a balance. So it's kind of hard to do if you're trying not to have amber to not have clear. So it's kind of like that old saying with business. Remember, you get quality, time, and price. You can't have all three. This is kind of like this. It's kind of like the same thing. You can't highlight all three of these. You either have good quality and it took you a long time and it cost you nothing, or you have good quality and a little bit of time and it cost you everything. So it's the same kind of thing here. You can't have them all. You could have the amber mixed in with a lot of milk and a little bit of clear, or you can have a lot more amber and no clear and white, but you can't have like just one. It's very hard to have just all white trichomes, and that's why people sometimes chop with a little bit of clear cloudy left. Let's see.
Yeah.
I grow one plant heavy amber every few months to have a nighttime smoke. Right, Ian, that's awesome, man. What I usually do is I'll wait until the tops get like 40% or 30% amber, and then I'll cut the whole plant, because that'll mean the bottoms don't have any amber. And we'll have more of like we'll separate the tops too, and we call that our nighty night, and then we put everything else aside, and that's the regular stuff. But no, that's that's cool. You do that. Swen prefers cloudy, just starting to go to the amber before the chop. Right. So, that's basically where I'm at. I like to do that. Well, not where I'm at just after that. I like to do just as the amber starts to show up, because I do like to get a good head high. That's I think very missed in cannabis. I don't think there's a lot of good, like, fucking stupid weed. It's stuff that makes you, just absolutely stupid head high. I don't think there's a lot of that around. I think a lot of it's more the indica, sedative or sativa energetic stuff that you don't even realize you're high after an hour because you're zooted and woke up. I like the head high, that like space cadet shit that just makes you like totally loopy for 20 minutes. I love that stuff, but
So
it's like all white trikes,
we yeah, we've identified when. Now we have to identify how. How are we gonna
Peter
chop this
asked it.
plant down?
Peter asked if there's a preferable time of the day to chop your plant.
Uh,
And what's the take on purple or red veins in trichomes? I would attribute that to genetics. Um, I'd say that's a genetic thing. Like, that's what makes buds even more purple or pink or, I don't think that has to do with nutrients or anything like that, like we would run into with the leaf structure when you're getting into flower and you have like purple leaves at the end weeks in your fade. That's a difference in chloroplast being made without the color because it's low on nutrients versus, having those veins. I do want to actually, we can go into that on another one, like colors on plants, all of them. Colors on plants, colors on buds, colors on trikes. We can go through like all that. That actually might be a good episode.
yeah.
So Peter also had another question, and he asked me this like a week ago, which is, when do you water if you're considering chopping? So if you're gonna chop this tomorrow or tonight,
If I'm gonna chop tomorrow, I would have watered 2 to 3 days ago.
right? And why is that?
Get that last little bit of bud swelling. Get a little chunky, but it also helps your plant dry a little more evenly, because if you start your plant of water, a week before, your outer buds are going to be, slightly dry, a lot drier than your inner buds. And then when you go to hang your plant, they're just going to dry out even quicker. So it just helps you get a little more even dry phase, I would say. It helps control humidity when you're drying.
Right.
There's a lot of different
I
ways
agree
that
with you
can
big
do
time.
certain things.
Yeah. Don't water it less than 2 days. Like that window is crucial because some people might have to strategically water right like the day of chop because they have such a dry environment that they need that plant to stay as humid as it can for as long as it can. They might chop the whole plant, flip it, and have a really dry environment. That's like, again, this is like a race car driver deciding to to do this, to go around a car at like a split second. Like, that's something an experienced grower decides to make that choice. This isn't like a set rule thing. Like, oh, if you have low humidity, water it. That's not a way to get away from low humidity. You should have the correct parameters. But if you water it right beforehand and then chop it, what Matt's saying is really a problem. If you have regular humidity and now you chop this thing right after you water it, that thing is going to be expelling water in every direction. It's going to take a long time to dry, way longer than it should. But that's with hang drying. If you were to wet trim the whole thing and cut everything off, you could water the day before. And then you're getting into like a 7 to maybe 10 day dry on your chop stuff, which isn't bad. It's really not a bad thing. I've had pretty good experience with that actually. And when you have an auto pot, you don't get the choice. The plant is watered. You know what I mean? And otherwise, you're going to have to starve the pot and shut the water off if you're going to try to keep 2 days.
I usually do that anyway.
Right. Well, I mean, who does that besides you?
I don't know.
Like nobody, dude. They just go chop their plant down. They got an auto pot. They got a reservoir. You know, people with hydro don't
I
go
think the
starve their
main,
pots. They just chop them. You know what I mean?
I I think those are also secondary. Like the main factor why I water right before harvest is when you do chop that plant down. What that little bit of excess water does, or maybe it's not even excess, maybe it's just the right amount of water. It it forces that plant to push resin out. You know, as that plant is like trying to expel that water, as it gets less and less and less, and your plant is basically drying at the same time, um, it produces more resin. With that plant. If you sometimes have like a really good environment and you water, like sometimes I can see, you know, on my bud, it looks like a little oil drop, or even sometimes it comes out of the stem too,
Yeah.
right by the bud site. That just tells me that my plant is
It's excreting
is really
sugars.
pushing.
Right.
Yeah, it's pushing resin and sugar, which is something that you definitely want to see.
Right. Well, it's
Um,
called guttation on male or females. Do well on a male, it's different. It's the same type of thing. Guttation on a female is when it's going to excrete these like saps, and you could actually take that and eat it. It's like a sugar sap, you know. But that doesn't. I don't. I'm pretty sure you can't get high off of that. But when it is producing guttation, that's usually a great sign that all juices are flowing and that you have a high Brix content as well. So it is a good sign to have that going on. But essentially, I would say if you're in soil, I would give it a day or two uh, from watering to chopping because it could really complicate things. And depending on your method of harvesting, I know a lot of people just chop the whole thing and go hang it upside down. That's a tried and true method. You just need to have 60-60 temp and humidity and a little patience and wait for a trim gel. If you're going a different direction though, like for a wet trim, you could essentially have the plant in front of you and grab the bud still on the plant and just trim it. Trim the whole cola, turn the plant, trim the next cola, trim the next cola, and do all of that. Trim the entire plant and then cut each branch off and hang it that way as well. And that'll give you like more of a 5 to 6 day, 4 to 7 day window. Where this bud will dry as well. People say there's more terpenes. They'd say that there's more of a terpene retention when you dry trim versus wet trim. But I've typically seen the other way. I've seen more. You know what I mean? I've actually seen that my buds are more uh, flavorful with a wet trim than they are with a
yeah,
dry
I
trim.
do like I don't know. I think I do like a 60-40 or 70-30 type deal. So, like Eric said, there's a couple different ways to harvest your plant. And again, a lot of people do just chop the whole plant and hang it. Me, I find the best method, like what I get the best product of, I will wet trim my plant. Uh, I'll take pretty much everything off except the leaves coming out from underneath the bud sites for a couple of reasons. One, I hate being in trim jail. Two, it's easier to clip those leaves that are
The
hooked
inner
into
fans,
dense buds. Once they're dry, they get smaller. It's hard to really get in there and
it all
clip them
breaks.
out.
Yeah,
Um,
it breaks. You can't
so,
spread it apart like you can when it's wet too.
and then I'll just cut like almost the entire branch and I'll hang it. I'll have all six, you know, nice sized buds, and I hang each branch individually. I leave those little fan leaves on that are underneath the bud sites. Um, and I find that I pretty much am finding myself manicuring those buds and jarring them up after about 7 8 days. Um, and that's you know people that if you hang your plant entirely and you don't do anything to it, you're gonna feel exactly what I'm talking about in your hands, your neck, your lower, because you're gonna be hunched over like this,
Trim
um,
jail.
just feel that pain. I've been there, we'd all been there, I'm sure.
The fourth wall has been
So
broken. We'd been there.
just do what works for you. I do recommend, something similar to what I do, and I don't mean that like I want people to do how I do it. I just recommend that you look into it because it's great for beginners too. Sometimes I see people hanging plants entirely non-defoliated. They leave everything on there,
Mm-hmm.
and they end up getting mold. Because they didn't
Do any default or
take what
opening it up.
needed to be off that. Like when you leave a lot of wood on your plant, meaning like all the stems and the stalk and all that stuff retains water.
Yep.
So as that plant's drying out and it's trying to dry out, and if you don't have like the proper airflow and stuff, well, that water is still coming from that plant material into the buds, into the leaves, and now you have dry leaves on the outside and you got moisture built up in between. It's just it's a environment where things that aren't great for your grow to happen.
Right. And this is something I try to explain to people, Matt. Remember we were trying to explain this to people like a couple years ago about harvest. When you chop the plant, when you cut the base, like base stem, and you flip it, hang it up, right? You do nothing else. That plant can only dry, right, through the stem because it's the perforation you made in it. That's it. So if you were to go and take off main fan leaves like you do, um, and stuff that's just in the way, you're making more and more openings to this plant to dry, right? And that's what's going to happen. The environment is going to pull from those openings. It's like putting a holes in balloon, right? You put holes in a balloon and you put one. If you put one hole in the balloon, the air is going to come out real slow. You know what I mean? And it's going to take the longest for it to come out. You put a few holes in there and it starts speeding up the process. Now, from just chopping the stem to fully having this thing be, wet trimmed, that is like the spectrum there. You could go kind of anywhere in between there. But what's going to happen is it's going to drastically change your time period that your plant is drying for because of the fact that water can now escape from multiple places at the same time. And if you're going to cut every stem off, each bud and stem is going to dry like in 3-4 days. It's just the way it's going to be.
You'll also learn too, like based on your environment, you'll learn what method works. Like if you have a very low humidity, like if you can't really control those aspects of wherever you're drying your plant, I mean, if you have a really bad environment, meaning like it's dry, it's hot, or it's wet and it's cold, you might want to think about utilizing your tent at that point. Like hang your plant in your tent where you can still have. I hang mine outside my tent, just because I have a really good environment. I mean, most of the time it's right where I need it to be. 60. I have an air conditioner there. Um, because like when I'm in my tents and I'm growing, it's hotter inside my tent, cooler on the outside. So if I'm running 78 because of the heat that my light is kicking off, I'm 62, 65 on the outside, which is perfect for what I'm doing. But if you don't have a really good environment, let's say it's really dry, you definitely would want to leave more plant matter on that plant so it can help that plant stay, hydrated for the amount of time that it needs to be. Because if you're really dry and it's hot, that plant is going to dry so fast, and your terpenes are going to just dissipate. Um, and you're going to be left with probably a plant that smells a lot like freshly cut grass. Um, your buds are going to be a little bit more larvae than they normally would have been.
Like a hay smell when it
as
dries
opposed
out.
to as opposed to a perfect environment where that plant can slowly do its thing. And as it's doing that, you know, it's getting sticky as shit. It's clamping down on itself, and you get a little bit more denser nugs. With so just keep in mind that this goes back to almost episode 1, where we talked about environment. It's just as important now, if not more, than it was in the beginning.
Yeah, this
And
is the
all
most
throughout
important
your
for
day.
sure. Yeah.
Like Eric said, you spent all this time, and you did all the things right. And it's like, I would equate it to this: you worked all week, you got $1,000 paycheck, and you took your ass right to the casino and bet that $1,000 on a one hand of blackjack, and you lost. You're gonna be pretty upset with yourself, and pretty down on your luck. So now's not the time to feel like you're done. A lot of people do that. They're like, all right, I did this, I cut it down. I'm just gonna they either smoke it too soon, they don't burp their jars like they should regularly.
Well, let's get into that. Let's get into what happens when you so all right, you chop your plant and it's hanging out and it's done and it's ready to be trimmed up. Or you wet trimmed it and now you want to jar it, right? Basically, you should have hygrometers that fit in your jars that aren't pieces of junk. But you should be using a system where you could put your buds in there for 20, 30 minutes and see the relative humidity that they're at. They should be jarred at 55 to 60% humidity. And, you have these things jarred. What you're doing is it's not like sitting in its own musk. You know what I mean? There's a scientific thing happening when you jar your bud. So when you put your bud into a jar, what happens is the oxygen gets depleted in that jar by anaerobic bacteria. And the anaerobic bacteria start to eat the chlorophyll in the plant material in the buds. And if you don't have this process, which is called curing, happen, this is the most important part of this, you won't have that plant material broken down. And then plant material, once it dries out, it smells like
your
hay.
throat will suffer immensely.
Right, but this is where you get that hay smell. When you get hay smelling buds that are just freshly cured, and they might get you ripped, but if you don't give it time to cure, that plant material is still in there. So curing can be done for up to 3 years. People have cured buds for, in a jar. You should be putting this in there and letting it sit for a minimum of a week before opening it. And this is why it's essential to have them at the right humidity when you put it in there, because it should be able to sit there for a week. If it's over humidity, it will become moldy within a week. So, you put that in there for a week and you're going to open this jar and that's burping it. What you're doing is you're letting the gases from this reaction that's happening with the anaerobic bacteria eating this chlorophyll. And what you're going to do when you close it back up is create that seal again. And it's going to take about a week for that process to start happening again. So this is why you burp it again. And now after the big amount of, your chlorophyll has been expelled from there using anaerobic bacteria, you're in the second week of this, right? So now you're 2 weeks into cure. Now you could start leaving it, a little bit longer. You could leave it for 2 weeks and then burp it. And that's gonna, like I said, that's just going to let the anaerobic bacteria build up even more, and it's gonna let them eat even more of that chlorophyll, leaving you with more terpene and less plant taste. So, a good rule of
Your
thumb is about
primary
a month.
concern, though, like the first couple days of jarring your buds, is definitely keep your humidity in check.
Right.
Because if you don't, and you let's say you put buds in there, because they might feel dry on the outside, but they're really not, and you didn't really fully understand how this process works, and you throw those buds that feel dry on the outside into that jar, and then like you come back in 2 days and like now they're all moist and squishy, and you're like, what the hell? How did this happen?
Right.
So you definitely like the first 4 or 5 days, you definitely want to keep an eye on your humidity, and your temperature for sure. And all that other stuff that Eric just went over definitely coincides with that. Um, so let's get prehistoric real quick, because we have to appeal to all audiences. Like, let's say you're a beginner, you don't have all of Eric's fancy technology, digital hydrometers and whatever he wants to put in his jar. Uh,
I
Here's
see
actually
people
what I
using
recommend.
wood. I see people using the
Yeah,
wood
well,
moisture meters now, where you stick the diodes into the freaking. I was like, what are they? These guys are nuts now, dude. What the hell? It tells you the moisture level.
uh, for a very beginner without any like fancy stuff. I mean, the things Eric's talking about, they're not super expensive. They're like $25 for a 12 pack. But
Right.
I recommend like the first 2 3 days, like once you cut your buds off, of the actual branch, and now you got all these little nuggets of love laying around. Uh, Throw them in a brown paper bag for like a day or two. That will allow them to dry, but that paper sack that they're in will keep the humidity in check because it will absorb moisture. It's not going to get fully saturated, but it absorbs a little bit of that excess. It kind of just helps, keep your buds where they need to be. And after like maybe 2 days, then throw them in a jar. You're just giving yourself that little extra added security that you did the right thing the first time. It's not going to be any harmful to your buds. It can only help you. Um,
Actually, and I want to just add to that: don't use a cardboard box. A cardboard box and a brown paper bag are so different. Yes, they're the same color, but no, they're not the same. The paper box, a cardboard box, has such a high level of terpenes from the wood and the glues and the stuff that goes into making the box that they're actually so strong they will leach into the buds. You could have open a jar and it will literally smell like cardboard. I've seen it happen, and I've smoked buds that were dried in a cardboard box and it tasted like freaking cardboard. It's kind of crazy, but the brown paper bag is way different than cardboard. So cardboard box could potentially screw you up. But the
Me
paper bag
personally,
is good. But
yeah.
to add to the archaic way to do it, if you are hanging your whole plant, the telltale sign that your plant is ready to be trimmed and it's dry is you grab a branch and you hold it about 3 inches apart and you just bend it into a U. And if it snaps on one side and doesn't break on the other, that is when you're just about at 50%, 60% humidity within the buds. And that's a perfect time to do your trim gel. As Ian said, it is therapeutic. Therapeutic. It is therapeutic if you don't have to do like 10 or 12 ounces alone by yourself right now, just right now. And here's what ends up
Or whole
doing you in.
plants.
Right. Well, this is what ends up doing you in. Right. What ends up doing you in is you will have no time to do this. It'll need to be chopped. You'll chop it, and then the clock starts. Right. You are in that as soon as that thing's dry and ready to be trimmed. You got to trim it. If you don't, it's going to over dry. You're going to ruin it. If you let it hang and you don't even check it long enough, check it for it being dry for too long, it's going to also dry out. So like there's 2 points. So let's say you start to trim and you start at optimal times and you got half of it done. You want to do the other half tomorrow because you have work in the morning and it took you way longer than you thought and blah 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 blah. Now you ruined half your bud because you couldn't get back to it for 4 days. And now it's so dry.
Yeah.
You try to smoke a bowl, you take one hit, you put the bowl down, and it smokes itself. It's gone. You can't even get another hit off of it. The shit's just burning,
Yeah,
and all terpenes
I'm kind of a victim
profiles
of that,
down. And you could lose terpene profile. You can lose your terpene profile from over drying.
I cut a plants down
sucks.
once, did everything I was supposed to do, got it hanging. 4 days later, I went on vacation.
Right.
Came back 6 days later. I was like, oh, fuck that up.
Yep.
Can't do that anymore.
Yeah, dude. But like,
I got,
timing.
hang it. It'll be 2 weeks. I'll be back just in the nick of time. Nah, didn't work out that way. I came back to, something that looked sick. And I was just like, shit. I still came out with good bud, and but it wasn't definitely where it should have been for sure.
And that's the thing, dude. Like, it's not that anyone plans on not fucking trimming their plant or finishing it. It's just that, sometimes life gets in the way, and you have no other option but to deal with it how it's being dealt with, and it sucks, but it can happen to you. So you really want to. This goes back to the original question up here that Peter asked. When do you want to chop your plant? You want to chop your plant when you have enough time laid out to handle that. And if you have 5 plants, that's going to take you a while if you're going to wet trim it all, like, have a plan that makes sense for you. If you wet trim all your plants, you could essentially do one at a time. And if you do one and you don't have time to do the other, it's still on the freaking stem growing. You know what I mean? It's not like you cut it down and the clock has started. You could go and harvest one plant for the next 5 days, and then, in 7 days, every day, you're going to jar the next ones. So, you could space it out. You just got to make sure that you're understanding of what you're going to have in front of you. And trim jail is not something that a beginner can anticipate what it's going to be like, especially if you do a great job and you have super dense, sticky, awesome buds. Trim jail is just even worse. So,
and so you cut your plant down, you trimmed it up, you got to where you want, you manicured your buds. Now they're off. You're in jars. You're through weeks 1 and 2. So, essentially you got 3 to 5 weeks average. And like you'll start to smell your bud. It's gonna start developing. Certain things are gonna be more prominent. 1 week you might smell the little bit of grass, and then the next week now you're smelling like, hey, it kind of smells fruity a little bit. And then it goes from fruity to citrusy, and then you're like, wow, this is really starting to like throw my nose for a loop.
right.
And as you go further and further on, you're like, hey, this smells like straight candy. This smells delicious. So give your bud that time too. That's really important. A lot of people, they'll get through, 1-2 weeks of jar curing, and then like week 3, they're like, oh man, I'm just gonna start smoking this shit. It's ready. It smells like weed, which is cool, but
it's just the surface, right?
you'll notice, like, if you harvest a plant, you get 3 or 4 ounces off of it, and you keep it in the jars, and the whole time, which is normally what I do. You'll notice that as you go through that weed, it's getting better and better most
right.
of the time.
Because it's sad.
You're just like, wow, I smoked this like 2 weeks ago. It's fucked up, and it's really good. Like, because you're learning that it's like wine. The longer you let it sit, the better it's gonna get to an extent.
Right. I mean, it's not like it's going to get more or less potent. It actually, if you were to leave it in jars in like the sun or something, and you don't protect it, it could actually get less potent because remember those trichomes will degrade with light to CBN. So you could end up leaving this jar or something in the sun tasting like tea. That's another big one that happens. People say they have a tea taste. That's from too much light. So you got to make sure these things are in the dark as well. In the dark, in jars for I'd say a month is a solid standard.
Yeah,
But
month
when you
is
get into
month is
2 months, like you're
yeah.
saying, if you get 10 ounces off a plant and you can't smoke all of what you grew, that's when you start to realize, like, dude, this has been in jars for 3 months because I haven't been able to smoke it, and like
Yeah.
I should have let it all sit. Right. Patience is really hard.
I got shit from 2021.
Yeah,
You
dude.
know,
That's at max cure, 3 years.
this is just jars. Like I keep them in my little plastic storage thing, and they're up here. I got jars from she
Right.
long,
And
long time ago.
just to connect on it, when you're trimming, right, wet or dry, take your fan leaves and put them in one pile. And then your sugar leaves and the stuff you're trimming off, put it in another pile, separate them. And when you trim the buds down, keep all of that together. And you could freeze that. If you have a friend that knows how to make bubble hash, or you have bubble hash bags or anything like that, this is what you would use that for. Don't throw your trim away. You can make butter, you can make oil, you can make hash, you can make rosin, you can take the hash and press it in a press and make hash rosin. Like you could do so many things with that trim. And the trim is, I would say, just as important to keep as the bud. Like it's there's a lot there you're gonna just throw away, and a lot of people do throw away because it's way too hard to do anything with. What the hell is that? Is it cats and fireworks?
Yeah, the
Weird.
greatest things in the world.
But yeah, keep your trim, and it's not that hard to make it into butter. Like it's really not. You decarb it, and we could go over edibles on another episode. But like it's definitely worth keeping. But separate the fan leaves because They're not gonna. They're just gonna piss you off anyway. When they dry up and break up, and you get plant material from places you don't need, it becomes a pain in the ass. So, definitely separate them when you're trimming. I like
Yeah,
to take,
get the most out of your time.
yeah,
That's the biggest thing. Get the most out of your time. Your
I,
plant's just not. I mean, the buds are the main focus, but sometimes there's backup dancers that need a little bit of love too. They make the whole show complete. Don't throw. That's just being wasteful. I mean, if you're not really that type to make concentrates or edibles or anything like that, I mean, you don't really got to save it, but if
could
you
compost
want to
it.
get a little bit more, yeah, if you really want to get a little bit more out of your plant, and you know, I make butter. It's super easy. I do it right in the crock pot. It just goes for like a whole day.
Right, and there's
I don't
even
gotta do
easier.
shit.
There's even easier than that. You
Yeah,
could just put it in a cheesecloth and boil it in the olive oil and make like the olive oil extract to make food with.
yeah.
It's kind of really
Well,
really
some
easy to
people
do. But you're not going to get that back once you throw it away. So, that's why it's worth keeping it for sure.
So what's on tap for next week, man? What are we gonna be doing next week?
All right. So, next week is our actual first episode of the podcast, last episode of the series of, I think we need to name the series in the podcast
We
for.
did, didn't we? Didn't we call it? I forget what we called it.
I don't remember either, but we got to name this
I have names
series.
for it.
It's going to be episode 1 to 10. Congratulations on our 10th episode. Well, that's pretty awesome. We have fireworks. Woohoo! Fireworks. But 10 episodes in on our podcast, and we have 10 stages here for people that are beginners to refer back to. They really just get brushed up on some key tips and things to keep in mind while growing for the first time, or if you have a specific spot that you have a problem with, maybe our episode might highlight, a way for you to get out of that issue, or just give you some insight to help you prevent it in the future.
I mean,
But
this
moving
this
forward,
chapter was just a brief introduction to growing. Seed to harvest. We
right,
just touched on most of the major key points.
right.
Definitely gonna be talking about the finer details in the future. What certain things do. Uh,
Yeah, I want to dive into plant growth regulators. I want to dive into bro science. I saw Swen up here said he knows he's going to get some crap for it, but he says he keeps his lights on before chop for 24 to 48 hours, and then he chops. I know a lot of people that do 2 days of darkness. So I think we need an episode about bro science where we jump into talking about all the bro sciences. We need something on, different types of concentrates, how they're made, what they do, how they affect you. Like there's episodes we have here, obviously, that are going to be cannabis, but the real main thing was getting.
And if our chat ever has any topics, that they feel like they're struggling with, certain aspects of your grow, or if there's maybe a talk about that you find is interesting, or you want to get more information or a different opinion on things, definitely drop some topics in the chat, or let us know like what you guys want to hear about, and we'll try to incorporate that into a couple of these episodes, because we want you guys to get what you want to get out of this just as much as we want to give information to help to others. We want to cater to you guys. You're our subscribers, and you're here for a reason, and we want to make you feel like you're a part of the family, and touch on the topics and talk about the things that you guys want to talk about. So definitely feel free to have your voice in here and let us know, and we'll definitely do our best to bring the noise to you.
Right. This is I want to add to that and say that this is where we're gonna have a lot more fun on the episodes with interacting with the audience, and making this more of a show than a connected episodes on education. We are definitely going to continue doing that. We might just break it up in series, so we have more of a podcast. So get ready for the fun to actually be here next time. We're going to be doing more podcast related things, and for our first true episode of the podcast, we're going to be giving away some genetics next week. So definitely be here, because that's a subscriber only thing. If you're a subscriber, make sure you're in being a viewer, because we're only going to take people that are in the live for the giveaway. But we're going to be doing some stuff from Secret Stash. I'm sure Matt has stuff that he has a pack that he could get from the Secret Stash. Matt's got quite a secret stash there, actually, sir. So you guys,
Do I?
oh, you do. I'm sure he'll welcome one pack to the grow community. He's probably just picked one up right now. Did you just reach over and pick one up?
No, they're over in my box. But yeah, I can definitely. Yeah.
I got something for everybody. I got something.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
A little bit of this and that. But, we just want to say thanks for being here with us. And what better way than to give something away, right?
That's right. That is right.
Well, I want to thank everyone for being here and bid you adieu on the 10th episode, and welcome you to come back. Welcome you to come back next week. Where it's actually my birthday next week.
Oh, nice.
On the
my
podcast.
Birthday was a couple days ago.
Oh, happy birthday, man!
Yeah, thanks, man. I don't really celebrate them, but whatever.
Woo-hoo, you got fireworks for celebrating right now. Look at that.
Yeah, and cats. Like, I'm not even a cat person, but they're there. So
yeah, you got them.
Embrace them.
Yeah, you got them. But we're gonna have the podcast is also on my birthday, and on my birthday we're doing the 15K giveaway, which is 10 winners. We're going to be giving away 3 regular packs of seeds, 3 multi-packs of seeds, 3 Osiris seedling light systems, and the Photon 680 with the total controller. So 10 winners.
Can I sign up? Sheesh.
10 winners. We're going to be doing that at the Wake and Bake Live that is on our public Facebook page. So next Saturday is going to be a pretty packed day for Uncle Rick's Genetics, and We'd Been There podcast right after is going to be, we're going to be cut loose on the podcast. So I'm liking it.
I hope I can make it.
You need to be there. Who else is going to set the fireworks off?
Dang, you're right. Well, folks, it was
Peter, thanks for being in here. I don't know who else is watching, but we got 2 viewers left, and thanks for being with us till the end here.
Dos amigos.
I'm kind of sad, man. We're closing it out, you know. All good things must come to an end, but
yeah.
And at least we didn't do it in 12 steps.
Huh.
That would have been counterproductive, I think.
Are we still live?
No. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for watching, and thank you, our listeners, for listening.
I just want to make sure.
Bye.
Share there.
We're out.